awesome sauce? It's Mr. Damon. I just want to let you know that you're a 10 out of 10. You're 5 stars. Top notch. The best of the best. Champion of champions. Grade A. 100% incredible. That is what I think about you. And I am so thankful that I get to be your friend. Everyone loves you. When you walk into a room, you should look around and in your mind tell yourself, everyone here loves me. Because that's how important and special you are. And when something painful or difficult happens to you, remember, Jesus wants to walk you through it and use it to make you stronger. How do I know this? Because that is exactly what happens to the young girl in tonight's story. This season of Church Kids Stories is all about transformation. How Jesus' love transforms us into who God created us to be. And tonight's story shows how Jesus wants to transform your talents, the things you love to do and are good at, into beautiful ways to show his love to others. Our story begins with a woman named Tabitha, who also went by her nickname, Dorcas. Now, I understand that is kind of a funny name to say, isn't it? Say it with me, Dorcas. That's awesome. We don't know how she heard about Jesus, but we do know that the moment Dorcas chose to believe in God, his love filled her heart and the Holy Spirit transformed her life forever. Jesus took her insecurities and gave her confidence. He took her selfishness and gave her a heart to serve others. Something else you need to know about her is that Dorcas loved to sew. Have you ever tried sewing something before? I have. Once I used dental floss to sew a hole in my surfing wetsuit. It worked great if you're wondering. I sewed a pair of shorts that had a hole in them, and I sewed a hole I had put in my dad's tent. Basically, I am the world's greatest sewer, church kids. Instead of just fixing things, though, Dorcas would sew and make colorful skirts, blankets, and scarves for her and for her friends. One day, as Dorcas was sewing a new purple blanket, the Holy Spirit put a beautiful idea in her head. What if I used my sewing skill to make clothes and blankets for poor people who can't afford new ones? I may not be the best sewer in the world, but I can do something. A few days later, she finished the purple blanket, walked out into the city, found an elderly widow, and gave the blanket to her as a gift. From that day on, Dorcas sewed as often as she could. She would take the clothes and blankets she made and give them away to widows who didn't have any money to buy new clothes. The more Dorcas gave away, the more she sewed. That's hard to say, church kids. Let me try it again. The more she... Nope. Mistaked again. The more she showed. There it is. Say that 10 times fast. The more she showed people what Jesus' love looks like. Enter Peter the disciple. Do you remember him? He's Jesus' disciple that got into trouble a lot. He denied Jesus, cut off a man's ear, and he used a lot of bad words. And the Holy Spirit transformed Peter just like he did Dorcas. And Peter was now the head of the very first church. Everywhere Peter went, he told people about God's love. When Peter prayed for the sick, the Holy Spirit would heal them. When Peter talked to large crowds of people about God, thousands of them would say yes to Jesus and join his kingdom. Well, one day, Peter decided to go on a road trip to visit Jesus' followers in the nearby cities. So he packed up his favorite snacks. By the way, what are your favorite snacks to eat on a road trip? Mine? Sour Patch Kids, definitely. Peter also packed up his trusty teddy bear, grabbed his walking stick, and headed out. His first stop was in a town called Lydda, or Lydda, or Lod. It had a lot of names. It's still there. You can actually visit it in the country of Israel. There, Peter found a group of people and talked to them about Jesus' rescue plan. As the people listened, their hearts opened and a whole bunch of them said yes to God. Then Peter saw a man who was paralyzed for over 8 years and couldn't walk. Peter smiled and said, "Friend, Jesus Christ heals you. Get up." The moment he said it, the Holy Spirit healed the man's spinal cord, and he jumped up onto his feet and began jumping up and down for joy. Walked? He walked for the first time in 2,920 days. It was a miracle. When the people saw this, the entire city chose to say yes to Jesus and put their trust in him. But at the exact same time, 11 miles away in the city of Joppa, something sad happened to our friend Dorcas. She became sick, really sick. So sick, in fact, one afternoon she laid down in bed and didn't get up. A few days later, she died. Hundreds of people surrounded her house and cried because of how much they loved her. Two of Dorcas's friends heard that Peter was in Lydda and immediately ran off to find him. When they arrived, they found Peter and asked him if he would come and pray for Dorcas. Peter said, "Sure," and started walking the 11 miles to Joppa. When he arrived at Dorcas's house, he could barely get into the front door. Hundreds of elderly widows were crying and holding up the amazing shirts, blankets, and scarves and dresses that Dorcas had lovingly made for them. Without asking any questions, Peter could tell how much Jesus used Dorcas to help the people around her. Once inside, the two friends led Peter upstairs to the room where Dorcas's body laid still on the bed. Church kids, when we die, do you know that our spirit, the part of us that is made in God's image, leaves our body and immediately arrives in heaven with Jesus? This is why we never have to be afraid of dying. When we die, we get to see Jesus face to face. So, this is what I think. While Peter sat at the bed next to Dorcas's body, Dorcas was actually in heaven celebrating with Jesus. How amazing is that? But even as she celebrated, Jesus had a special plan for her. The Bible doesn't say how it happened, but I think it might have happened something like this. Jesus looked at Dorcas with a gigantic smile on his face and said, "Tabitha, you did an incredible job using your sewing gifts to help so many people. How would you like to help even more people?" "Of course, Jesus," Dorcas shouted, her face beaming with joy. "How? Everything here in heaven is perfect. Everyone has what they need." "Well, that is where things get a little exciting," Jesus said with a twinkle in his eye, and then whispered something into her ear. A huge grin spread across her face. And at the exact same moment that Jesus was explaining his plan to Dorcas in heaven, Peter sat next to her still body inside the house in Joppa. And what happened next is a miracle. Like a parent waking up their child in the morning, Peter looked at Dorcas's dead body lying on the bed and said, "Tabitha, it's time to get up." And the moment he did, in heaven, Dorcas smiled at Jesus and disappeared. Instantly, her spirit returned to her body in the room. Her heart began beating, the neurons in her brain began firing again, and her eyes opened. She was alive! Dorcas looked at Peter, smiled, and said, "It's good to be back." Peter took her warm hand that just moments before was cold and gray and helped her sit up. News of the miracle spread like wildfire throughout the entire city. In a matter of minutes, the entire city of Joppa heard about how the power of Jesus brought Dorcas back to life from the dead. As a result, thousands of people said yes to Jesus and joined his kingdom. We don't know exactly what Jesus whispered to Dorcas. But don't worry. You'll be able to ask her yourself when you see her in heaven. You see, when Jesus transformed Dorcas, he showed her how she could use her talents and ultimately her life to help others know him too. What at first seemed like a small thing, her ability to sew clothes and the fact that she liked fashion, it wasn't small. Jesus used it to rescue almost an entire city. And in the same way, Jesus wants to use you and the wonderful special gifts on the inside of you to show his love to others too. Why don't we do this? Let's talk to Jesus together. Take a moment and close your eyes and say this after me to Jesus. Jesus, thank you for giving me so many gifts. Help me to see how talented I am. Just like Dorcas, will you use me and the gifts I have to grow your kingdom? Amen. Who knows? Maybe someday you'll be a fashion designer, kind of like Dorcas. Maybe you will patent medical cures for diseases that save the lives of millions of people. Maybe you will write songs about Jesus' love that are sung by people in hundreds of different languages around the world. Or maybe you'll write computer software that people use to learn more about God's love. Or maybe you'll become a pastor and you will tell stories about Jesus, just like Mr. Damon, to help others know him too. But whatever your talents and whatever your interests, I know this: Jesus is going to use you to change the world. Have a wonderful night's sleep and sweet dreams. We can't wait to see you tomorrow. Good night.